Okay, let me just add one quick more thing here that was similar to what we did before. I'll also add a public int, a public static int, so a class variable, which counts the number of people who've been initialized. And so that starts off at 0. Every time this constructor gets called, I'll say num people plus plus. So just as a sanity check, if I make Nick and then I print out the number of people, then I should see, so then I say person dot num people. I should see 1 after this. Okay. And I could make another person. Let me just check that. If I say person Chris equals new person Chris Traley 31, now I should see that there are 2 people. Okay, so that's just a review of those static variables. So this is a member of the class that's not tied to a particular object, but I can update it from within a particular object. Okay. But actually, I'm not happy with Chris because Nick is a master. He's like a guru. But Chris, he's still working his way through. He's really still a student at heart. Okay. So I want to add some functionality. Chris is going to be taking some classes. Nick, he's done. No classes. He's just a person. Okay. So I could go ahead and let me make a new class. We'll call it student. And I could just copy and paste all this stuff over there, right? I'll just change the name of the class to student. And I could do that. That's all right. And so, and maybe I'll just go ahead and then add also something like class year, string class year. So I'll say, private string class year. And so now I'll say this dot class year equals class year. So everything's pretty much the same. Yeah, and then maybe down here I'll also say that number of years old, and I'll also say plus class year. Okay, so now this class so far is very similar to the person class, but it has one extra member variable, which is the class year. So I'll just say Chris is equal to, I'll just say instead of person Chris, I'll say student Chris is equal to new student, and then I'll give this the class year. Eternally a sophomore. Okay. And let's just check. So I'll just print out Chris now. And then I'll print out Nick, and then print out the number of people. Okay, so when I run this, I see Chris Traley, 31 years old, sophomore, very good. Nick Scoville, 41 years old, number of people 1. Okay, so that's a little bit annoying. This num people belong to the person class, but a student's certainly also a person. But annoyingly, I had a different num people, so that's one issue, right? So I would have had to somehow also increment person.num people here. But now that's starting to get a little messy, right? So I have to increment the number of students, but also the person number of people. Okay. The other thing is, look, this code between these two is almost identical. I made one little change, but I had to copy all this stuff. That kind of sucks. So wouldn't it be nice if there was some way so I didn't have to rewrite all this, and also so that these could be coupled? Well, guess what? That's what inheritance is, okay? So what I'm going to do, so here's the next new bit of syntax I'm going to introduce here. So let's try to just only keep the thing that's new. So the only thing that's new here is the class year. So let me just delete this and delete this. And also I celebrate, a student celebrates a birthday the same way that any regular person does. Unless they're turning 21. I think I've heard those birthdays are a little bit rowdier. But for the most part, everybody's age is going to be going plus plus, and that's about it. So I don't need to define that again. And maybe we'll do something with the toString, but let me leave that out for now. Okay. All right. So what I need to do, though, to make sure that I can actually copy the functionality from a person over here, is I need to say public class student extends person. Okay, so now we're getting into it. So here's our new keyword. It's called extends. So this is our new syntax number 2, extends. So what this is saying is I'm making a class student that's going to inherit This is where the word inheritance comes from. It's going to inherit all of the variables and methods of the person class. But then I can also change some things and add things. So person in this context is called a superclass. So here's some vocab for you. So person is a superclass, and student is called a subclass. Okay. So you notice it's throwing an error here. It says constructor person and class person cannot be applied to given types, required trig in. Okay. So one of the things is, okay, yeah, we're passing along the class here, but we need to pass along the name and the age as well. And so for this, what we're going to do is student is a person. It has the functionality of person, which means we can also call the person constructor. Even though this is the student constructor, we can call the parent class's constructor. So that's another name for this. So the person is a superclass, or we also call it the parent class. Student is a subclass or a child class. So I can call the superclass or parent class constructor. The word for that is super. So if I say super, then I can pass along the name and the age. And what that's going to do is, since student extends person, super actually means person. So this is saying call the person constructor with these two parameters. So that's going to go over here, and then that'll set the local variables name and age to be what was passed along. And it'll also add one to number of people. So that's nice. We're making use of this method that we already wrote. Remember, usability. That's one of our important principles. So we're reusing this code we already wrote. And the only thing we added is, hey, you know what? We're going to add a class here as well. Okay, so let's just check that. I have the same main here. Let's just see what happens when I run this. So now, okay, I say Chris Traley is 31 years old. Chris Traley is actually a student now, not just a person. And now I see num people equals 2. Of course, I lost the change that I made to the toString, so now it just says Chris Traley, 31 years old. It doesn't say his class here. But another thing I can do, actually, is, oh, sorry, quick before I say that, notice that num people is 2. Okay, so cool. So actually, the student constructor called the person constructor and incremented num people. Okay. But so another thing we can do, actually, is so-called override methods. So we can say, you know, this method was okay for a person, but I wanted to do something slightly different for a student. In particular, I want to add the student's class here, right? So I can say public string toString, and I can actually define student's own version of toString. So just to show you that, I'll just quickly return student. I'm not going to return anything else for the moment. But you'll see now when I run driver, it's just going to output student when I go to output Chris. So it's no longer calling this toString at all. This gets totally overridden in the subclass when I redefine it here. Okay? So this is called overriding methods. If you're going to override a method, it has to have the exact same return type and the exact same name and the exact same number of parameters. If I actually call it something different, toString 2, and I go back to run driver, actually it's going to end up calling the original toString on person, right? Because this is a new method, not the same method anymore. Okay, so it's got to have the same name, same exact name, same parameters, and everything, and return type if it's going to override. Okay, but let's go back to where we were before, when for a student we return their name and the age plus the number of years old. Well, I've already done the trouble of formatting that string here. So let me reuse the work that I did in person. And I'll say, okay, well, string ret equals super.toString. So here we go with that super again. So super, again, it's like this, but for the parent class, for the super class. So what I'm saying is, hey, you know what? I'm overriding this method here, but I actually want you to, for a second, call person's version of that method here. Okay? And what that's going to do is that's going to return the name plus the colon plus the age, years old. Okay, and I could just go ahead and return that. And let's just see what that does. So right now I'm calling the superclass's toString, and I'm just going to return it. I'm storing in a variable. I'm just going to return that variable, right? So now I see when I go to run driver, now I get back to what I was before. So essentially, I'm not doing anything special here. I'm just calling this method and returning the result. But now I can actually extend the functionality. So I can say, well, I want you to do what you were normally going to do, and I'm going to add something to that. So I'll say ret equals ret plus, comma, class year. Okay, so now let's go out and print this again. And we see now this toString is doing something different. It can actually output the class year and everything. So that's how you override a method. But the cool thing is, I don't have to override every method. Some methods I can decide do the same exact thing. So again, I celebrate birthdays the same way. So I don't need to override that. So I can just say, if I say Chris.celebrate birthday, I can do that. I never had to redefine it in student. And it should just increment my age. So I'm 31 now, but let's say I just celebrate my birthday. See, now it says 32. So it actually, I never defined what the update birthday was here, but I didn't have to because I'm extending person, and that's defined here. So when I say celebrate birthday, it's actually going to go to the person class and say, oh yeah, there's a method that does that. Let's do it here. And it's going to treat Chris like a person for a second, just an ordinary person celebrates his birthday. And we see that that actually happens. Okay, so let's just do a couple quick comprehension questions on that, and we'll do our last bit.